Hi, this is Nicole Rivera, and you're listening to the Stop Writing Alone podcast. This week, when I was making the writing exercise for Story Club over at stopwritingalone.substack.com, I had this sort of thought about the way we internalize and take on writing advice and how I have grown over the years, becoming more confident in my own knowledge about the way I approach my writing, but also about the way that I learn. And so part of this comes from, all of my teaching, and my husband is back in college classes right now for teaching. So I guess all of this education stuff is on my mind, and my teacher hat is on, and I was thinking, I want to have this conversation about all those times you're either in a writing class, reading an article, reading a book from a writing expert, and you are trying to absorb everything, and sometimes it doesn't click. And when I say that I've grown over the years, there was a time in my life that if I received writing advice of any kind, right, that didn't resonate with me and I couldn't sort of bring it to fruition, I immediately took that on as a personal inadequacy. Like, I can't do this. And what happened this week is we were reading, this month, we're reading the first chapter of 27 Essential Principles by Daniel Joshua Rubin. 27 Essential Principles of Story by Daniel Joshua Rubin. And we're in chapter 1. We're doing the first lesson. And what was really interesting to me is that when I read the first lesson, which is about how you write beginnings or how to write a great beginning of your story, he calls it drop the hammer. And he uses Hamlet as the exemplar of how we've seen it done by a great. I totally got what he was saying and the importance of what he was saying, but the order in which he was saying how to implement it, there's a section of the book that says how you do it, was completely opposite to the way that I think about, or how I have thought about stories in the past. I'm not saying that I could never do it the way that he is discussing, but my natural tendency is to go in a different direction. And I said, you know what I can do here? I can see the lesson that he's teaching and apply it to the way that I'm teaching. And then I realized as I was writing this up for the subscribers of the Substack, is that this happened to me last week when I was sharing the writing prompt tool of the week over on the MV Rivera YouTube channel. I was looking for a new prompt. I have so many prompt tools. I mean, you guys know this. I have books and games and all these different things. And sometimes some of them start to catch dust. They're just not getting used. And one of them that was happening to was these high cubes that I have. It's a box of over 60 cubes. They're like dice, right? And 5 of the sides have words on them. And you're supposed to roll them to write poems, to create haikus with the dice. Well, I don't do that. I haven't been doing that. I haven't been using it to make haikus. I haven't been playing with it. So what did I do? I decided to see if I could use that tool in a different way to meet me where I am right now, which is writing short stories. And I did. And yeah, I'll put the link in the show notes so you can see. We rolled cubes and got a prompt for writing a short story. And I've already heard back from writers that have used it and written short stories based on it. So here's what I want to say to you. Whether it's a writing prompt tool, and I discussed this in the YouTube video last week, or writing advice that you are getting from an expert, I want you to follow these 3 steps. First, I want you to try it the way the person intended. I want you to try it out verbatim. So I had the high cubes. I definitely did, when I first got them, roll them, write poems, roll them to try to create haikus. I had some fun with it, but it didn't really spark me in any way. This advice that Daniel Joshua Rubin is giving in the Drop the Hammer lesson, I am going to do it in the order in which he said. I am going to try to create a beginning story of a story, an event, in the way that he describes how to do it, just to see how does that work for me, right? I think anytime we get advice that is coming from a place of someone who has a wealth of experience, who has, is wearing the expert hat. They've clearly done some sort of thinking and research and practice with this thing. No one's just coming out and throwing advice at you because they just made it up on the fly, right? This worked for them and maybe worked for them over and over and over again. So give it a shot. Every single time I say, if you were interested in finding out what this person had to say about how to write in that, whatever it is, if it's story structure, character development, whatever it is that you were researching, I say give it a shot. Go for it. But then here's step 2, interrogate it. Ask yourself, is this working for me? And again, that 2-step process is something that I've always done. Is this working for me? But in the event in the past that the answer was no, I was feeling like an overwhelming failure. It's not working for me. I don't know how to write. I can't do this, or, if I stop using the haikus, they're not working for me. I'm not good at writing poetry, or I shouldn't be doing prompts. I don't know. I really... I don't know. I have an incredibly low self-esteem, or if this is a natural first tendency for us to think that if something that comes from a place of authority doesn't work, it's immediately our issue. I think, it's one thing if you don't understand it, if the advice given is not clear to you and that's why it's not working. There's still that second step of interrogating it is really where you can figure that out. No, it's not working for me. Why isn't it working for me? Well, I really don't understand what they're saying. Okay, that's one thing. What if it's not working for me because I did it and I'm still not excited about the story the way it's going? I'm still not excited about the way this character is developing. Something doesn't feel right. Or I did it for this practice and this exercise, but I honestly don't think this is how my brain works when I go to draft a new story. And that's where I come to with a lot of writing advice. I can see it through and follow the directions verbatim and make it happen for an exercise. But then when I sit with it, I'll say, that's great. And I can see how it could work for writers. I can see how it could work if I approach it this way. But I know in my natural state of developing my own stories, I don't really think in that direction. So I have a choice. I have a choice to reframe the way I show up to my writing so that it fits that model. Or I can try to have the model meet me where I am. That's a big teaching term, is to meet your students where they are. When I would walk into my freshman algebra or pre-algebra class, I can't immediately start teaching quadratic equations when it becomes clear to me that my students still don't know their multiplication tables. I got to meet them where they're at. I got to figure out how are we going to bridge that gap? What are we going to do to bring this new tool for, going to the next level to this student who's not there yet. Well, same thing happens with all of this writing advice. So in the instance of the drop the hammer lesson, I can see the working pieces that Daniel Joshua Rubin's talking about. And I can see that my brain tends to work backwards. So essentially, in short, the drop the hammer lesson is discussing how when you're writing a story, you want to begin with an event. You want to drop the hammer. This event will change the whole outlook and perspective of your character, where they are. So, we're thinking like inciting incidents or what have you. One of the things that Rubin says is like, if your character's happy, then they'll be sad. If they're sad, then they'll be happy. If they're feeling like totally indifferent and not doing anything, then this event will drive them into action, right? So it's that turning point. And one of the things that I shared with my subscribers is that, of course, that makes absolute sense to me. However, I've had the experience where my brain has worked in the complete opposite way. I don't always start with a character. So in the example of my YA novel, Girl Unplugged, when I got the first spark of the idea of what I wanted to write about, I was fascinated by solar storms, because this was back in 2012, where I'm going to nerd out here for a second, but we were in a solar maximum, which meant that there were multiple solar storms happening on the sun. And so different energy fields were hitting the earth. And there was a lot of, in the science world, there was a lot of nervousness about the summer. And I think going into the fall of 2012, that maybe we were going to get hit with something big. So that was like a big drop the hammer event in my mind. I was like, wow, I want to write about that, because what can happen when these things hit the earth is that we can lose power, we can lose technology. And, in 2012, we're just getting started with all of the internet, social media, all of this stuff. And I'm thinking, what would we do if we lost everything in a blip like that? So there's my drop the hammer event. I already had it. What I needed was that character whose life would change completely on a dime, which, would be many of us. But I wanted a character who would really be totally affected on all levels when something like that happened. So I had to reverse engineer it. I wasn't creating the event. I was creating the character. And so what I did this week was I created 2 writing exercises that showed the writing advice from 2 different perspectives. Yes, in the direction of how Rubin presented it to us. Here's a character, and I gave the subscribers 3 different characters. I said, pick a character, and now I want you to think about them, and I want you to write the event that changes their life completely, that changes them in this moment. And then the second exercise, I gave them 3 premises, 3 ideas, story ideas, and said, well, what if you had the hammer? What character could you create? And this was just me thinking about how this advice could work for multiple different types of writers. We all learn differently. We all write differently. And I think that's okay. I mean, I know that's okay, but I want to make sure that you know that's okay. That when you're reading all of these wonderful books that are telling you, quote unquote, how to write, I mean, if that's not it in and of itself, that there are so many books on this topic, you got to know that there's not just one way. And that if the advice is hitting you in a way that it's like, I really want this to work for me because there's so much of this that makes sense to me, and you're going back over it and it's still not clicking, then I want you to go to that step 3. I want you to go to that place and say, how can I make this meet me where I am? And what that requires is a level of confidence in your own ability to know that the way you're writing is perfectly fine. You're doing it. We keep seeking advice from all of these books and experts and things like that. And there's something in that seeking that is a tiny bit of lack of confidence in our own abilities. You know, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to read another book on this. I need to find out what to do next. And yeah, okay. So we all have we're learning as we go on. But hold on to some level of confidence in your own ability to know story, to know how you show up to the page. And once you have that level of confidence, you can then approach advice in a completely different manner and say, this is what I do. And I get that what I do may not be, award-winning just yet, right? I'm not at the tippity top of my game. But I know that what I'm doing is getting my words on the page and getting the story out of me. What can I take from the advice that you're giving me to form this story in a way that's, better, or just raise my story a level or two? So those are my 3 steps. Whether it is a writing prompt tool, writing advice, really anything. I always try it verbatim. Whatever way it has presented to me, packaged, created with so much thought goes into these things. I will follow the rules and go through it and say, how did that work? But how did that work is already step 2. Interrogate it. How did that work? Did it work for me? Can I replicate it? Am I going to show up to the page in that way all the time? If yes, great. You have a whole new technique. Go with it. Love it. Enjoy it. Spread the joy. But if not, this is an interrogation isn't a one question thing. You're stuck in the room, light blazing in the face. It's, if not, was it because I didn't understand and I'm not really getting the lesson? Or was it that it doesn't fit me and where I am at in my writing? Okay, if it's that second one, then you have that step 3 of where am I in my writing? What part of this fits where I am? How can I take those 2 things and merge them together to try again? And then you sort of it's a replicating process, right? Then you do it again. Now you try it with this new vision of it meeting you where you're at. Interrogate it again. Did that work for me? Did it not work for me? If so, great. Replicate it. Go on. Move on forever. If not, why not? I mean, and at a certain point, it's like, well, that's just not ever going to fit my style. That's not my kind of writing. I'll move on and find something else. But I think it's okay to take and I know I've talked about this before in the podcast, to take pieces of information and what works for you and move on with that. But I really just wanted to underscore this idea that part of that, the way you can show up to make that happen for yourself, is to maintain the confidence in your ability right now. So, yeah. That's what I was thinking about. Personalizing writing advice for you, where you're at, making it work for you, and growing from it. I am very excited for next week's Zoom call with the people who have subscribed to see what everyone thought of the writing exercises from this week's lesson, and also what they thought of this whole Drop the Hammer lesson, reading of Hamlet, and what it can teach us about our own writing. And I'm also curious to see if somebody has thought about this lesson in a third way. I just have those 2, but I bet you there's an infinite amount. Anyway, I'm curious about these things. But if you are not subscribed to the Stop Writing Alone Substack, all you have to do is go to stopwritingalone.substack.com. Subscription to the Substack page is free for everybody. You can get the podcast episodes there. You can get the YouTube videos there. Also monthly events like write-ins and writing prompt parties. But there is also the paid subscription, which is $5 a month or $50 for the year, which gives you the added things like this story club that I'm talking about, more writing prompt parties, more write-ins, and we do goal and accountability posts every single Monday so that we're writing down our goals, checking in on each other, and moving forward with all of our writing goals. So the link for that is also in the show notes. But like I said, it's just stopwritingalone.substack.com. But it's been fun. I'm loving using the Substack platform, and I hope that you have been able to interact with it. If you've had any issues with it, or if you're not seeing the emails, let me know. Just a reminder though, one of the cool things about Substack is that if you don't see it in your inbox, you can always go to that website, and there's all of the posts, everything that was sent in an email is up there for you to see. So pretty cool stuff. And my other Substack is storyhoarder.substack.com, and that's where I share my fiction and the novel Girl Unplugged, which I'm getting really deep into. I think I was at chapter 25 or 26 this week. I don't know. It's pretty amazing that so much of it is out there now. So I thank everybody that's been reading along and giving me comments and hearts and everything. Yeah, it's been great. But that's it for me for this week. I will talk to you again next Thursday. Happy writing for my subscribers. Don't forget, we do have a writing prompt party this Friday. I believe it is at 5 p.m. Eastern. But double check your July events calendar over on the Substack page. Have a wonderful week. Thank you for listening. Happy writing, and I will talk to you next Thursday.